Welcome to section 5, where we're going to be looking at functions, tab bar controller, and table view controller. In this section, we're going to take a look at Swift functions and methods. We're going to learn the two different ways to dismiss a view controller. We're going to learn how to use the tab bar controller to manage multiple screens. We're going to be introducing the table view controller. And finally, we're going to learn how to display our task objects in the table view controller. Swift functions and methods. In this video, we're going to learn what a function is and why they're useful. We're going to learn how to create a function that takes one or more parameters. Let's head over to Xcode Playground page to learn how to create a function. Let's pretend that we want to convert a temperature from Celsius to Fahrenheit. What we do is we declare a temperature in degrees Celsius. So we say temperature Celsius. So let's give it a value of 20.0. So that means it's 20.0 degree. Then we want to convert this to Fahrenheit. We have a simple formula that we can use. And the formula is let Fahrenheit, if I can spell it, equals to Celsius multiplied by 1.8. And then you want to add 32. So this is the formula to calculate a Fahrenheit from a Celsius degree. Now let's pretend that there are different cities in a country and each of these cities require a slight adjustment to the temperature. So maybe we need to add extra 2 degrees or extra 3 degrees to actually have correct temperature. So what we do is we'll say let final temp, which is the final temperature, will be the Fahrenheit. We want to add, let's say 2. Okay, so now we have the Celsius degree, then we convert that to Fahrenheit, and then we make an adjustment to it to have a 70. Okay. So now let's pretend that I've given you 30 different values or 40 different values in Celsius, and I've told you to calculate that and give me the final temperature. So that means I'll give you a multiple city temperature, and then I'll give you multiple city adjustment value. So then you will have to manually do this all the time for 40 times in order to give me the correct value. As you can see, that will require a lot of typing. You have to give me the temperature, then convert it to Fahrenheit, and then add the extra value to the Fahrenheit to get the final temperature. What a function does is allow you to put multiple lines of code in a code block. So you put multiple lines in a block of code, and you'll be able to call that block of code with a single name. So let's do that now. In order to create a function, you use the word func, and then you give the function a name. So I'm going to call this one convert Celsius to Fahrenheit. So let's just give it a very small name. And then you give a open and close bracket, and then you open and close a parenthesis. So you have this parenthesis where you're going to put your code blocks, and then use this bracket. And I'm going to explain why we have a bracket very shortly. So now we're going to have a function that converts Celsius to Fahrenheit, and denoted by the word func. So what I will do now is I will now copy all of this code block, and then put it inside the function. So that means now all our code blocks are inside the function, and I can call the function. What I'll do is I'll print the final temperature. So let's print the final temperature as well. And then if you want to call this function, all we need to do is just say convert. You see, we're able to call it, and it's going to print the value into the console. There you go. So what this means is that if we're given 30 different values to convert, we can simply call this function 30 different times. By calling it, we're able to execute all those lines of code just by calling one name. But the problem now is we're just getting the same value. And the reason is because there are two different variables that needs to change inside this function. The first one is we want to pass different Celsius temperature, and the second one is we want to pass different value for each city that we want to calculate the final temperature for. So this is why we need something called a parameter. The bracket here allows you to send values into the function. What we do now is to pass the Celsius temperature that the user wants to convert into the function. So I'm going to say Celsius. So you give your parameter a name, and then you give it a type. So the parameter we want to pass in is a Celsius, and it's of type float. So that means I can delete this value now, because the Celsius that is passed in is what is going to be used inside the calculation. So now let's call our convert to Fahrenheit again. Convert to, you can see now that the function body has changed. It will take one value which is of type float, and I'm going to pass 20. Now let's calculate for 30. So for 30 degrees, now let's calculate for 40 degrees. You will see that we will get different values for them because now we are able to pass in different arguments. So 70, 88, 106 for 20 degrees, 30 degrees, and 40 degrees. Now look how easy it is to use a function to calculate even 100 values, because now we can just call this code block by its name. But there's still a way to make it better. Remember, this value 2 is still hard-coded inside here, which means we want it to change as well because each city has different value. So let's now give another parameter to our function. We're going to say city value, which is also going to be of type float. And then instead of putting 2, we're just going to put city value. Okay, so that means whatever we pass in will be added to the Fahrenheit to give our Fahrenheit temperature. And we're getting all this error because remember, when you call a function, the number of parameters you declare here must match what you pass in. So right now, it doesn't know. It's looking for the city value parameter, but it's not there. So let's try again. Let me delete all of them. We'll say convert Fahrenheit. You see the body is now different. And then we need to pass in 20 degrees and value of 2. And then convert 30 degrees, value of 3. Convert, let's say 40 degrees, value of, let's say 10. We'll get different results. And it's still going to call. Now you see how easy it is for me to calculate this for a lot of different temperatures by creating a function that helps me to do that. So this is why we need a function. So what's the difference between a function and a method? Function and method are the same thing. The difference is where the function is declared. If the function is declared in your code, for example, when you're writing a code and you need a function to help you to do something, we'll call them a function. But if you declare a function inside a struct like this, like the struct we used previously, if I say func and then I said do something, this will be known as a method. Any function declared for an object is known as a method. Any function declared inside a struct or class to create an object, that we've done here when we create multiple objects, that will be known as a method. Functions and methods, they're the same thing. The only difference is where the code is placed. When they're placed inside a struct or a class, we haven't looked at a class. If they're placed inside it, then we call that as a method. Otherwise, we call it a function. In this video, we've learned what a function is and why they're useful. We've learned the difference between a function and a method. And finally, we've learned how to create a function that takes one or more parameters.